Hey all, Mark Vega, Run Long After 60. I'm glad you're here. Do you ever notice where inspiration comes from as a runner, or ultra runner, mover, walker, shaker? You know, it's not just from social media. It's everywhere. It can be anyone from anywhere, anytime. In fact, the inspiration for this very podcast was me watching 3 finishers at Cocodona last year in the age group 60 to 69. There was only 3 of them. Now, technically, we didn't get to watch them finish. They all came in apart from each other. There were 3. And when I looked at the data, 14 started, 3 finished. The one that came in first is our guest today, Kevin Fleeger. Wow. When I saw that, I was impressed. And then Stephanie Irving came in after that. And then Paul James Johnson. Well, we had the opportunity to speak with Stephanie. She was episode 1. And Paul James Johnson recently. And finally, we caught up with Kevin Fleeger. Now, this guy is an inspiration. And I don't want to overuse that term. But he's retired. He's got a great disposition. He cheers people on. He supports others. But here's one thing I learned from him that really blew my mind. What I realized from Kevin is that we all stand on the shoulders of giants, of those who came before us. So I'm just a little bitty runner, realizing I'm old, but I can still do it. And so I was inspired to do just that. But guess what? Kevin was inspired to run even further and faster and longer distances by another runner. And that runner is not 60 yet, but the amount of inspiration he provided to Kevin was hard to calculate because of the sheer volume of miles that Kevin has now covered. If you're picking up the vibe that I'm putting down, that we all inspire each other, and there's really no magic number to start running or stop, and age really is just a number, well, I'm glad you're here. You came to the right place. We don't necessarily run for podiums, but we'll take them when we get them. We don't necessarily run fast, but if we can, we do. And if we do, we love those who run slower, because it really doesn't matter. So many of the guests on this podcast have said just that. And so those are some valuable lessons I've learned. Keep up the gratitude. Don't stop moving. And keep listening to those who have been running. It is inspiring. Okay, with that, I think it's time. It's time for Kevin Fleeger. Let's go. Here we are, another episode of the Run Long After 60 podcast. Kevin Fleeger is our guest, and in a way, he really inspired this whole operation. So, Kevin, greetings, good day, thank you for joining, and good morning.
Well, thank you, Mark. Pleasure to be here.
Now, you're joining us from the East Coast, yes?
Yes, in Florida, actually, around Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
Kind of in between Jacksonville and St. Augustine, Florida.
Have you run any Florida races, like long distance, the Keys? Have you run the Keys yet, or that across Florida banana thing that happened last year?
No. Yeah, actually, I didn't run anything in Florida till I was about maybe 3 or 4 years into this deal of doing ultras. And, kind of the way you mention it there, I stopped and thought, I have not run a race in Florida. And so I found a 50K. It was like in January. I can't even remember what year now. And so that was my first. And then I ran Just recently in January at Long Haul down in Central Florida. So, yes, I have run in Florida. Florida is not blessed with a lot of trails. And what trails we have, there are a lot of nasty things out there that I don't want any part of.
Lakeland, yes, Lakeland, Florida for the long haul. You are a curiosity, my friend, unless you're just really good at not letting people see where you are, what you do. But as far as I can tell from Ultra Sign Up, you stepped into the ring at about the age of 59 or 60. Like, this is relatively new. And you're 66 right now. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to admit that. Yeah, I am 66.
Okay. When did you start running? When did you start doing ultras? Or, instead of going, listen, we're in our 60s, man. I can't ask you to tell me your whole life story. That takes too long. That's not even a podcast. I don't know what we call that. But so I try to be select, and I like to start with the right here and now. But you're a little bit of a different character, because when I looked you up on Ultra Sign Up, it looks like things start at about age 60. Is that right? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
When did you start running?
Yeah. Well, my first was at age 59. I was getting close to retiring. And I had run roads, for a long time. And I just was kind of bored with that whole deal. And, and I just was watching YouTube one evening, and I came across trail running. I didn't even know the first thing about it. And so I watched some videos, and, there were some good race videos out there. And I direct messaged Jamil Coury and said, "Hey, I'm interested in doing this with Aravaipa." And he responded to me in like a minute. And, he gave me a couple of races to go try. So, that's what got me going. I did my first one out in Arizona, Whiskey Basin, 60K. And probably like a lot of folks, you do your first one and you finish, and you never want to do it again. Right. I finished, and, the beautiful thing about that one was our daughters showed up unexpectedly, and I was able to share it with them. When you finish one of those things for the first time, you're hungry and you can't eat, you're tired and you can't sleep. And all I could see in my sleep was rocks. And I said, well, I'm never doing that again. And of course, a day or two later, you're looking for the next thing to do. So that's what got me hooked. And I think the next year, I think was soon to be COVID or something like that. And I didn't really, really get deep into it at that point. But, the temptation was there, let's say.
Right. Let's talk about the timing of that first race. So it's April 2019.
Right.
It's fascinating to be alive and to be participating in the sport as it starts to hit its hockey stick growth pattern. So the idea that you DM Jamil Coury in 2019, Aravaipa's up and running for sure, but it needs all the support it can get, right? Mm-hmm. All the race directors, UTMB starts to pile in 2019, starts to look for other organizations to acquire. So I love that Jamil Coury DM'd you right back in 2019. Yeah, here's what you can do. And that's a beautiful story. And I'm bringing it up only because 2019 wasn't that long ago. And now look at the growth and how it's taken off, right? It's fascinating. And what were you doing? What did you retire from such that you're like, well, I'm bored with everything else. Let me go run a 60K.
Oh, so what kind of work was I doing? I worked in the automotive industry for 35 years, something like that, with Nissan first and then Toyota. I worked the last 25 years with Toyota here in the southeast, and mostly out visiting dealers and working then on the logistics sides for about the last 10 years or so.
Well, that doesn't sound like it. It sounds like you had to maintain some kind of level of fitness that was unrelated to the work, although travel, can keep you going. So what was your fitness routines? And you said you ran on the streets or roads. So were you a marathon person? Did you run road marathons and all that?
No, it was this area. There's a good running community. I mean, if you want to jump in a 5, 10K every weekend, you could probably find one. And my idea of running, believe me, I was always like an average athlete. I was never, the greatest baseball player, this, that, or the other thing. And
right.
I really started running to stay in shape because I was traveling a lot. And you end up in a town and you don't have anything to do. And your options are, well, I'll go eat and then lay around, or I'll find something to do. So I picked up running. It wasn't my favorite thing to do, but I started doing it. And, I just found with all the traveling that I did, it took me to places that I wouldn't normally see if I just sat in a hotel room.
So you weren't at the hotel treadmill. You were out on the streets in the place.
Yeah. I was finding places to go run. It started really on a football field. I ran on the track and kicked the football around, and then started running a little bit more and a little bit more. And then I kind of got into a routine. My idea of running was just, put on the shoes and go run as fast as I can. And that's basically what I did. I didn't know the first thing really about any kind of training or anything like that. That didn't come until I started to get into ultras. So you ran, I remember, when we're 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12, that was running, right? Well, when you run, right. you don't, there's no such thing as jogging. That was for old people, right? So if you're going to run, right, exactly.
You're just sprinting. Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. As I told you off the camera before we started, and I teased it here, so let's start here. In May of 2025, thanks to Jamil and thanks to Mountain Outpost and Billy Yang and the media coverage of longer distances, including, I think the big debut was Cocodona 2025. It was at that moment that I realized that because you could see the data, 14 people, ages between 60 and 69, started the Cocodona 250, 254, whatever it is, started the Cocodona 250 May of 2025. I know that for a fact. But then I learned that only 3 people in that group finished. 3 people. A guy named Kevin Fleeger. So I write down his name. I'm like, I got to go talk to this guy. He was the first in the age group. And then a woman, Stephanie Irving. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, that's amazing. Not that women can't run long, but I love that out of the 14, there's Kevin Fleeger and there's Stephanie Irving. And then an hour after that comes Paul James Johnson. And for me, Kevin, that was a watershed moment in some way, because I realized, look at these people in their 60s doing an incredibly hard thing in a group of other crazy people in that age group who also wanted to start the 250 race, but to finish it was pretty unique. And I have to credit you, this very podcast, my efforts here at Run Long After 60, in part was inspired by your finish. When I looked at your data and Stephanie's data and Paul's data, and I thought, this is the world. I want the world to know this, that there's people like these people out there just doing stuff for themselves and just doing hard things. And we'll go back to some of your other races before, but when you towed the line in Cocodona 2025, just last year, were you aware that there were 14 of you in that age group starting? Did you have that awareness at all?
No, not at all. I had no idea.
Okay. After you finished, did you become aware? When did you become aware that, okay, there was 3 people in the age group that finished?
I don't even know. I mean, I really didn't maybe pay attention to it that much. I just kind of felt like I was just, another crazy person out there. So I'm sure at some point I did, but it was probably a couple months later. I don't know.
At that point in time, you had, I'm looking off to the side here because you have 35 or so races, incredibly impressive because that's not that many at starting at 60, 59, 60, and you have a lot of long races. So you first ran and finished Cocodona in 2024 at 64 years old. That was the longest you'd ever run at that point in time. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yep.
What was your level of fitness for the 2024 edition? Like, okay, you'd run a bunch of hundreds and 50 milers and including Black Canyons, 100K. Like you ran some great Aravaipa races and other races, but when did you decide I'm going to do Cocodona 2024?
I think it was probably because it was a little bit easier to get into that race then than it is today. I want to say it was probably around December. What would have been 23, and I was like, well, I was able to do some of the shorter distances. The 100. Not that they're short, believe me, and they present their own problems. And I thought, well, if I'm ever going to go jump on this train, now's the time to go do it. Because you quite never know when, you get some kind of injury and you're not going to be able to maybe do it, especially the way that you would like to do it. And so I signed up and, then realization starts hitting you. Well, what am I getting myself into here? Because, you're going to have to go multiple days, so you start researching and, trying the best you can, but nothing really prepares you for it. You just got to get on it and go. And so, your question about level of fitness, I increased my mileage some, and I don't, rarely do I hit 100 miles a week in training. I mean, That was probably the first time I did it, and it was only a couple of times. So, I do block training. So, I might do 3 or 4 weeks of that 70 to 80 miles. And then, I take a week down and then, continue the next block. And, in between, I'm doing a lot of strengthening exercises too, to kind of keep everything going too. So my level of fitness was pretty good. It wasn't a situation, well, geez, I know if I have the ability to do it. It's just whether, between the years here that I'm going to be able to endure it for, repeated days.
Okay.
And, fortunately for me, I was able, our daughters crewed me. And, most of the races I've done, I do on my own, but for both Cocodonas, our daughters were there. And, both daughters have never were on a trail before. And, each one of them ran, I think, about 40 miles with me that first year.
Oh, so they didn't just crew you; they paced you too.
They crewed me.
Put a pin in that. Let's get to that last final chapter, 24, and then hear about 25. But in September of 2023, you run a 100-mile race, the Woodstock Festival, the 100-miler, Pinckney, Michigan, September 8, 2023, and then not until Cocodona is many, many months away from that. So September 2023, you run the 100-miler. December, you run a 50-miler. About that time, you think, oh, I'm going to sign up for Cocodona. And then looks like you do a 50K in January of 2024 in Florida. Then you do Black Canyon's Ultra 100K, February 2024. So couple of things. Number one, was Black Canyons kind of like it's a cool race. I'm going to do it one of these days. But was it part of your training blocks for sure in February of 2024, a couple of months before Cocodona? So was that part of your training runs and races? Yeah,
that was purposeful to get a little bit out in that area. I think 5 of my early races were in Prescott. So I was familiar with that area and wanted to get, a little bit more to where the, starting segment was. And that's why I jumped into Black Canyon. And, there's a portion of that course that is Cocodona. But so that was on purpose to go out and do that.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned before the Whiskey Basin. You'd done that run before 4 or 5 different times, different distances too. It looks like. Before we get to your daughter's crewing and pacing, you mentioned something that's close to my heart now because I just kind of realized its critical importance, and that's the strength training. As you retire, what kind of strength work were you doing? But then, how did that change as you decided? Okay, 250 miles is different. I know what a 100 miler feels like. I can do a 250, but so how did you start? What has your strength training been in general? And then once you decided to do Cocodona, what kind of enhancements did you do to strength training that change it to get you ready for that first Cocodona 2024?
Well, I would say the thing I love about this sport is that as you do different races at different distances and you listen to your body will tell you what you need to work on. You know, like I have, been in some races where my hips lock up and I can't run anymore. My legs are good, but my hips just aren't allowing me to run. So what do I do to strengthen that up? I'm going to be using poles in some mountain races. How can I strengthen my upper body up? So, by going that route and getting beat up a little bit early on, with some of these things, I've kind of developed a routine. And, since I retired, I kind of do, I call them twofers. So I usually do 2-a-day workouts. I'll do a morning, if the weather's good, I'll be around or I'm in a block, I'll do a morning run. And then I'll go back and do an afternoon run. I don't really do many really long runs in training. Maybe the furthest I'll go is 16, 18 miles, something like that. But I'm still able to get the volume in. But, I try to do, strength and conditioning just about every day, whether it's a bunch of push-ups, core, stomach work or leg work. I'm doing something, to try and keep that muscle, those muscles, strong.
Or is any one of those 3 distinctions more important than the other? Legs, core, upper body work? Or do you try to just keep it all synced?
Yeah, I don't know that you can skip any of them. And I do some weights in the gym, but not many. So most of what I do is, I'm able to do at home, or if I'm, traveling, I can do it in my hotel room or whatever. And, so, I'm just using mostly body weight. Not that I won't use weights, but, so, I'm pretty strict. I keep a spreadsheet of everything that I'm doing, just to make sure that I'm tracking things. That's part of my, quirks where, I just love building Excel spreadsheets. So I track things.
Sometimes I make more spreadsheets than almost like I must be avoiding something. You don't need another spreadsheet, Mark, right? Sometimes. That's sometimes. Let me show you this. And I'm going to go over these stats, but just kind of wanted to paint the picture here. Let's see if I can bring it up and so that you can see it. There we go. You see that okay? So This is 66 years old now.
Okay.
1562. That's how many miles you've raced since turning 60. But this only is what's counted on Ultra sign up. It's nothing else. It clearly doesn't count your training, anything like that. 35 ultras that are completed. Peak volume here, 64. Lots of 200-mile races. And this year, wow, we're going to get to that in a second. I looked at the races you've signed up for this year. I'm like, okay, this is it. So do you ever track in your spreadsheets, do you track things like this, like to make a chart of what you've done?
Not in a summary like this. I almost liken it to, gamifying things, where every month I'll look from one month to the other. Well, did I do more push-ups this month than last month? Why didn't I? What were you doing? And then I make some little notes, maybe I had a cold, that, prevented me from doing some things. So, But a summary like that, yeah, usually like at year end, you get your Strava, update, how many miles you ran, how many hours you were doing it, and elevation gain and all that. But so sometimes, yeah, I do look at that. I think you have to, right?
I think so. I think you have to is the right way to say it. Here, I think when I made this for you, I'm like, oh, Mark, I got to get more work to do. Look at this one. Look at this one's really exciting, I think. So are you kidding me? When you compare it with, maybe it's the colors, I don't know, but look at this. So you run tons of race miles for sure. And then you turn 64 and you just like, what? It's insane. 693 miles, right? But now, this year, you're ready to do a lot more than that. And right. I think that's pretty exciting. So, but before we get there, take me back to your daughters, because up to that point in time, they don't run trails. And you said this is for the 2024 Cocodona. And they're going to crew you, but they're also going to pace you. Like how you'd already ran lots of long distances. You're in the mix of how trail running works, what ultra running is, how the kind of connective tissue you have to have with community and friends and family. So talk to me about the decision and how it came together such that you were able to, your daughters are like, okay, I'll do it. Like, what is this, Dad? What are we doing? Okay, let's go. Tell me about that. Tell me the story about how it came to be that they participated.
I think it was from their part. They were afraid of me being out that many days and going that distance on my own. So I think it was of concern that they joined me on it. And we talked about it. We had some meetings and, talked about the course and, where they could, jump in. And, with that race, you don't have anybody that can pace you until you get to Prescott. So, you're 70 some miles into it. And then there's some sections where they can jump in and that are pretty tame. And, by that point, not many people are running. You might be running here and there, but you're power hiking and that sort of. So, and outside, I think of one section going up to Sedona. Most of it was in the daytime for them, and because I wanted them to get ahead to the next town, and get a good night's sleep so they could deal with me. Because I think my one daughter said I was like a drunken toddler. At certain points, where I just, when you're hit with, when do I sleep and how long do I sleep and this thing, you never get sleep, right? And so there were moments that I was just like, I was kind of out of it, and they had their hands full at certain points. But without them, I would have really struggled to finish. So
was it just the two of them? How big was the crew? Okay,
that was it. Yeah, that was it.
How old are they, or were they at the time? Were they over 30 or in their 20s or? Oh,
no,
over 30.
They were over 30, yeah.
Yeah, makes a difference, I think. Okay.
Yeah, and they're both in pretty good shape. So, I mean, they had no fears about doing it. And so they jumped right in. They were awesome.
They know how the speed at which you're covering the earth, and they know you, and they're like, oh yeah, we got you, Dad. I can do that. I can do that. I can keep up with you at 150 miles into a race. I can do that. Okay. Right. What was after the 2024 event? How long did it take for them to say, let's do it next year?
Well, they didn't say it. I said it.
Okay. What was their reaction?
They said, oh, not again. And I said, I promise I'll do it in 2025, and then I'll take a year off. So they agreed to come back and do it again. After finishing that first time, I was like, man, I could have done better. There's things that you learn by going a due distance that you can improve upon, and that's just part of the process, right? In that multiple day, it's sleep, sleep was a big thing. And I will say some pain management too. And by that, I mean, in that 2024 race, I mean, I was in pretty good shape the whole time. My legs were fine, but the bottoms of my feet were just, they felt like somebody beat them with hammers. And it prevented me from running. And we got to, I think it was Walnut Canyon, which is the aid station before you go up Mount Eldon.
Right.
And one of the daughters said, "Have you had any ibuprofen?" I said, "No." "Well, here, take these."
She's like,
okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other daughter was like, "Have you had any caffeine?" "No."
What are you trying to be, Iron Man, Kevin? Come on. Oh, my goodness. Okay. What mile was this? So you're already past 140, 180.
It's like 200. I don't know what it was at that point. So they load me up with that, and I take off, and I was like a scalded whatever. I mean, I'm running like a madman at that point because all the pain went immediately away. And it was to the point I got halfway up Eldon, and I called them on the phone, and I said, "What the heck did you do to me?" You know?
It was that much of a difference.
Oh, it was just, it was incredible.
Was your fueling must have been okay? You must have had the right amount of fuel and carbs and sodium. It was just wow.
Yeah, it was just pain.
And the caffeine. What happened? To sidetrack here, it have anything to do with your shoes? Like, do you have a brand of shoe that you like the most? You use the same shoes? You run for 1,000 miles in them? Do you get rid of them every 200 miles? Or what's your shoe deal? And at that moment, when you think your feet are been beaten with a stick, did you at any time think, "Oh, I need different shoes"?
I probably, no, believe me, I take care of my feet at those distances. And I'm blessed with, I don't get many blisters at all.
Good.
So, yeah. So, like I said, it wasn't that. And, I've been running in the same brand of shoes ever since I started. And, that transition from road running to trail running, I tried to keep that same drop rate. So, I couldn't or didn't feel comfortable going down to a zero drop or a very low drop. So I found a brand that, still had that profile. And no, I think I went through probably 5 pairs of shoes. So it wasn't, a matter where,
good.
It was just the pounding.
By the time you get there, what are you using now? Are you in Hoka's? Are you in ASICs or Brooks?
Solomon.
Solomon. Okay.
Yeah, I've used Solomon ever since I started.
So after the 2024 race, how do you use caffeine and how do you use ibuprofen? Is it a part of your kit now, or? Oh
yeah, it's part of the. I start with it, and our one daughter's a dentist, so she kind of put me on this regimen. Every 6 hours you can take some ibuprofen if you want to. You can slide some Tylenol in between. So that's what I do, and it's helped quite a bit. I hold off really until I feel like I have to do it, because I don't want to, maybe tax the system. Not that I've ever had any stomach issues or anything like that. So, but it's certainly a part of what I do now.
So no blisters and no stomach issues. So what do you fuel with? If you're no GI issues in general, what's your approach to food when you do?
Go ahead.
I want to hear what's the difference when you're doing a 100-mile race versus 200-mile, because it's a big difference, I think. So what's your, in general though, what do you train with? What do you fuel with when you go run long distances?
I think when, you start into this, you got to find what works for you. And, so I think the first race I ever did, I was doing gels. And I think to the point where it was just like, man, I can't do this for, a 50K race. I just eat these gels. And I think the next next race I did, I just ate Chips Ahoy the whole time, so it was just silly,
Yeah, that's quite an extreme. That's quite an extreme shift.
Well,
I don't want gels, so why don't I just eat cookies?
I think I did better on the cookies, but
okay.
No, what I found on the hundreds, when I got like into mile 70 or 80, I had a hard time chewing, and then swallowing, that kind of deal. And so I think one of the tweaks I did, I have liquid calories too. So, I do like a tailwind endurance fuel. I usually have that going. And I don't go for a lot of flavors on gels. I use a lot of the precision hydration gels and the chewables.
Okay.
And, might throw a honey stinger in there. But, in the multiple days, you got to get some real food into you. And the one thing that I started doing last year was I really wasn't paying attention to my protein as well, in the races. So I'm a little bit more cognizant of that. So, if you're doing 100-mile where you're doing some loops, I'll have some type of protein drink going. I'll do on some laps. When I'm 200-mile, I'll put my protein powder on. I try to get to that 100+ grams of protein per day. This year, I'm going to even try some dehydrated meals, some kind of like MREs, because they have hot water at most of the aid stations. So just why not eat a full meal? Because sometimes, you get to an aid station and it's like, and believe me, they do their best. And some things look really good, and some things, your stomach is telling you, I don't want any part of that. And that's kind of the way I approach, that. But sometimes it's just the day and the heat and the temperatures and all that play into it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just really wanting cold food, and sometimes that's hard to get to.
Yeah, that's why it's good to have access to a variety, because you don't know what you're going to need in any moment. You threw out the phrase MRE pretty quickly as disposable almost. Are you a vet? I don't remember. Are you a veteran?
No.
Okay.
No.
I think having an MRE type product that's dehydrated, is that what it's called? Dehydrated? Yeah. That would be kind of cool. Is there some running other brands that have it, or is this just something you want to is it like a backpacking, hiking kind of thing? Or I think that's a great idea.
I've never actually used one, and I was just shopping online, and I got something, I think it's like Peak Refuel, where they have, stated how many grams of protein and, some of the other things that are in there. And I've, so we'll see how it goes. I have no idea.
Especially in the longer distances. So I haven't run a 100-mile race yet, but I have one scheduled in April. Pretty excited about it. But there's such a distinction between covering the 100 miles and covering 200. It's just a different beast. 200 miles. Let me ask you this. Did you sleep when you were running a 100-mile race? Did you sleep? And when you're running at 200 miles, how did you sleep?
100 miles, no. I have not slept in any of the hundreds.
Okay.
I can usually get through the night pretty well. And I think a big key to that is buddying up with people, as you're running along. You'll, especially, if some of these races start, in the morning, it really doesn't matter what time they start. But, you get around people that are going around the same pace, and, you've been talking to them and everything, and say, hey, let's go. And, you're able to share some miles. And, that's another really great thing about, the ultra community is, some of the people, you get to meet and get to know, a little bit better. When you're doing road races in a 5K or 10K, you're there and you're gone and you're home. Yeah. And you don't know anybody. And I've met some really, really interesting, cool people out there.
As I hear your story and others, I think that's a really interesting and exciting opportunity for people to get out and run. And while you're out during the race, talking to people, because every person I've spoken with, they mention that because it's not just a community that you can see from a distance. And it's not just a community that you can be a part of because you sign up for a race. And it's not just a community because you can volunteer at an event. It's community because when you are out there on the trails in the middle of a race, you're out there with people running about the same pace, whatever, and you're just there to commune, right? By definition, that's kind of what it is. That's pretty exciting. Have you slept when you did the 200s? And have you slept at 200s? How does that work for you?
Yeah. It is sometimes very difficult. I think that's what I really learned in the first go around, the first Cocodona, was that what I attempted to do was not working. I waited way too long in the race to actually lay down, because in my mind, well, I can get to this point before I lay down. Well, you've never been in this race. You don't know how long it's going to take. And, by the time you get there, you're 6 hours past when you thought you were going to get there.
Wow.
So I think the first year in 24, I didn't really sleep till I was 36 hours into it. Sure. I got to Mingus Mountain, which is about a mile, 110 or something like that. And I crashed for like 4 hours. And once you're in a deficit, it's hard to come back from that. And
tell me about that. Tell me about the moment you woke up at Mingus. Like after that, how do you talk about moving again? In that moment, 2024 race, first time you done a 250, you run too much, 36 hours. I'm surprised you could wake up at all, number one. But number two, do you remember when you woke up? Like, how did you get your brain to say, okay, I'm ready to go again?
Yeah, I came into Mingus with another fellow, and they have cabins there. So, we were kind of in that same bunk area. He woke me up. I had an alarm and I slept right through it.
Oh, wow.
So he woke me up, and it just so happened it was right at dawn. So, coming out of the cabin, okay, the sun's coming up. It's the perfect time to, okay, I know where I'm at. I know where I need to go. And, coming down off Mingus, you're not running anyway. So you had plenty of time to get loosened up. And, so that part wasn't a problem. But then, getting then back into the cycle of, okay, I got to lay down, and, so, that's the one thing that I said, I'm not doing that again ever in a multiple day race. My strategy now is I go 60 to 70 miles and then I'm down.
Okay.
And even if I don't sleep, I just need to get off my feet for a couple hours. But some of the races, like I did attempted to do Southern States 200 last year. Just the conditions there, the sleeping arrangements, just was very difficult to sleep. It was colder than anything, and they were some tents with heaters and everything else, and road noise. So it was hard.
So, okay, so May of 2024, you do Cocodona,
right,
and then you do Burning River in July. That's a 100-mile race in Ohio. So this is May, your first 250 in May. How was your recovery to go from the 250 miles to commit to another 100-mile race, a couple months later?
No, it was fine. I usually when I am doing a race, I try probably 2 days afterwards to at least walk, get on the treadmill, walk, for a few miles, or walk outside. I don't start running for probably a week, and, depending on how the body feels.
Right. Okay.
And then I just kind of work my way back into it. And so, I just probably took about 2 weeks off, and then, started getting back and building up into blocks again.
So you finish that 100-miler Burning River, 25 hours. Then you think, 2 months from after that, I'm going to do another one. So you go to Woodstock and run another 100-miler, September 2024. And you run that in almost 2 hours less time than it took you to run Burning River. Right? Mm-hmm. So you waited, you recovered. 2 months later, do another 100. And then less than a month after that, then a month after that, you go to Indiana and run the Indiana Trail 100 October 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 3 100s in a row. Is there, when that happened, because you ran Cocodona 2024, then you do these 3 100s every couple of months. Is that some kind of a cadence? I'm taking notes and learning, right? So how was the decision making, and is that a cadence that's really good for your fitness?
Yes. Yeah, exactly right. I found that about 6 weeks, maybe between races, somewhere around that seemed to be right for me, where I could, kind of decompress for a week, 10 days, something like that, and then start building up and do a block and then taper and then roll into the next one. And that's kind of why I did. But going back to Woodstock, that's where I'd done my first one. And kind of, I do this after every race. I look back and see, well, what could I have done better? And the one thing that I always pick up on is idle time. And, if you, especially I know on Strava, if you dial in, and one thing that's just hilarious is, if you zoom in on your the course that you ran at an aid station and you see your movement, moving around and doing all these things. And it's like, what the heck was I doing, for 15 minutes? So I did Woodstock the first time, and I had so much idle time. I'm like, I know I can do better. So that was the reason to go back and do that one. But about that 6 weeks cadence seemed to work then.
Does that apply to 100s, particularly the aid station idleness? You think that's because in 100s, everybody's running them now, like you're running them. And so when you try to not stay that long?
Yeah, I think it applies to just about every distance. I mean, you see some folks and a lot of, people with, some experience at it, don't sit in that chair. If you sit in that chair, you might get back up.
I have seen those videos. So, get out, don't sit.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, that's kind of swimming around in your head. But, there's a time where you gotta do a reset too, especially, if you're in some weather conditions that, aren't that friendly to running, when you get into heat, you need to sit down and get yourself together. But, I try to have things planned out as I go into an aid station. What do I need? What's most critical? Get that handled and get out, as quickly as I can.
Right. Just don't waste any time. Let's do two things. Let's do two different things. First, let's talk about the races that you didn't start or the races that you didn't finish. So DNFs. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to tackle the big one, which is your 2026 calendar. Just in general, how do you see DNFs? Are they failure? Do they set you up to go do a redemption run? Are they just data? Like, how do you see a DNF? How does it fit in your life, I guess?
I think I've learned more from DNFs than I have from races that I've finished. And two, it just, I think all of us are competitive in our own way. And it kind of fuels the fire, right? It doesn't set well, and some of them, I've always said to myself, if I'm putting myself or others at risk, it's time to stop. Well, I'm never going to second guess why I stopped, I DNF, but it still just irritates you, and whether you want to go back and redeem yourself at that race or, it motivates you to go to the next one. It's not a bad thing.
I'm looking at the monitor here to look at these, the DNFs. There was, and you mentioned Southern States. That's Southern States 200. You were scheduled to run that March of 2025, just less than 2 months from Cocodona.
Right.
And then less than a couple of months after that, you signed up and started the Moab 240 also in 2025. So talk about the 2025 calendar and what you learned from it, because clearly you learned something such that this year you got it mapped out.
Yeah. Well, let's start with Southern States.
Okay. March of 2025.
Southern States, you start in Georgia and you go down into Alabama and you're on the Southern Appalachians. And I got to mile 192 and I couldn't go any further. So I had 8 miles to go. What happened was about mile 160, I started having a back issue. My lower back started bothering me. And so when I would roll into an aid station, I'd lay down for, 5 minutes, get off my feet. And it just kept getting worse. And it wasn't the lean, where you see some folks, lean maybe to one side or the other. It was just, I was doubled over and couldn't stand up. And it just got to the point where I had a pacer with me. Fellow named Martin Schneekloth, who's done like 200 ultras. He and I finally looked at him. I said, "Martin, what would you do at this point?" He said, "Yeah, it's the right thing to do." Because the last 8 miles of that course are uphill, and it was getting to be nighttime, and I'm like, I could maybe get halfway up that mountain. And it might take me 3 hours to go 4 miles, and I might not be able to go any further. And then some, poor folks are going to have to come drag my butt off of that mountain. And I, you don't want to expose people to that. So that was the issue there and I never have had a back issue, and I have never, knock on wood, had it since. So I don't know what caused it to happen or not, but that one stung,
I only heard 2 people. You're the second one to talk about Southern States 200 and why is it hard? And the other person who talked about it fell and got a concussion at mile 193.
Yeah,
he couldn't finish it, and he's like the medical team. Like
wouldn't let him go.
He said, I think in my head, because I'd had enough time. He said I probably could have crawled the way up, but he said, but it was just up and hard, and just like you, like it was a really tough call. Sounds like for both of you, though, it was 100% the right call. And so from that moment, or let's forget the 2 or 3 days immediately afterwards, because who knows what kind of conversations you were having with yourself. But once you kind of settled down and took away something from Southern States and learned from it, what was that thing? What did you learn most from Southern States?
Well, really, it was, what can I do to strengthen my back up so that doesn't happen again? And, I, went to the doctors, try to figure out what it was. I actually went to a chiropractor because I'd never been to a chiropractor before. And, we did some things there. And
chiropractor, wait. Let me write these down. Chiropractor, caffeine, ibuprofen. Okay, got it. Next. So you've never been to a chiropractor. What did they say to you about this particular scenario?
I had no idea. The medic said it was probably micro tears in muscles in the lower back.
After 192 miles, sure.
Yeah, I pushed pretty hard. There's like a 26-mile road section, and when I say road, it was like a 4-lane highway with logging trucks going by and stuff like that. So I just wanted to get off that road.
Wow. Yeah, of course you did.
And and that was like a mile, 80 to 110 or something like that. But I don't know what caused it. The chiropractor said, I don't think it's micro tears. I think it's just probably a muscle strain or something like that. But any event, so the takeaway there was just, okay, what can I do to strengthen the back up? And maybe solve that problem.
What was your thinking? You signed up for Cocodona May of 2025, but Southern States, the 200 is March of 2025. So did you signed up for Cocodona first, or did you sign up for Southern States first?
Cocodona.
Okay. So you got good fitness. You're streamlining things. You're ready for Cocodona. Was this going to be, what was Southern? It was just a couple of weeks away. Like you said, like 6, 7, 8 weeks, 7 weeks away.
Right.
It wasn't a training run, was it? Like, what was the Southern States purpose?
The Southern State, the purpose was really, let's try out the new sleep regimen.
Okay.
And see how that works. And, from that perspective, it helped. I got to a certain point and I laid down and the sleep might not have been there, but I was off my feet for 2 hours and then I would go on. And, and your alarm worked that time at Southern States? Like you were dialed in, so paying attention to the sleep and the wake up. Okay. That's good. That's a victory. That's good. Yeah. And, and you're always kind of playing around with nutrition and things like that. And, just some more exposure to the multi-day deals. And so, that was on purpose to kind of test some of those things out.
How was your back by the time you start 7 weeks later? You towed the line at Cocodona 2025. How was your back? How was your fitness at that moment?
Yeah, I mean, that was a concern because it took me, I think, probably 2 weeks for the pain to go away. So, I didn't run. And
that's beginning of April. By beginning of April, it's like a month away from Cocodona and you're still in pain. Or that's when it went away.
And I just got back into a block and everything seemed to work. But at the start line, that was a concern. Is this thing going to flare up in day 2 or day 3? And
at what point was it no longer even thought about it?
When I finished.
Or was it always? Were you always concerned about your back in Cocodona 2025? Or
it was always in the back of my mind.
Okay.
I think once I got to over 200 miles, I was like, okay, I'm not feeling anything now, and I knew that at Southern States, I could feel it coming on, and it took about 8 hours for me to get to the point where I couldn't move hardly anymore. So, once I was at that point, I thought I kind of had it licked.
Pushed it. Okay. Yeah. So you finish first in your age group. You and Stephanie and Paul come through, but hours apart, but you are there, and bravo. What a finish. Coming faster than 2024. So much dialed in, recovering your back from Southern States. And this is May of 2025. And you're like, well, I'm on fire now. I'm going to go do the Black Hills 100 in Sturgis, South Dakota. It's not too far away from that. I'm probably going to be pretty good. But just to make sure, because I just did Cocodona, I want a different kind of belt buckle. I'm going to do Moab too, just a couple months after that.
Yeah.
Talk to us about those 2 races, because Cocodona, congratulations, 2 years in a row. You dialed things in. It's really exciting and impressive. By the time you ran Cocodona, you'd already signed up for Black Hills. You'd already signed up for Moab.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Black Hills, tough course. Sometimes you don't think about South Dakota as being anything but flat, but when you get out into Black Hills, it's rocky, it's rugged. And there's some good climbing. And when they say 100 miles, it's closer to 110 than it is to 100. And I think it was that day 95 degrees. And I got to, I think, mile 82. And coming down into that aid station at I think it was 82 or 83, there was about I would say maybe a 2 mile descent, and my hips locked up and I couldn't run. And because
what does that
of the
mean?
heat.
What do you mean exactly? You referenced it earlier in the podcast. Like, what does it mean when your hips lock up? Like, what does that mean?
It going uphill, no problem. You know, I could scramble up hills still, but going downhill, I mean, taking each step, I mean, you could just feel it in your hips that they're so tight that your body's saying, I don't want to run anymore.
Do you feel like you're going to fall, like lose your balance? Like,
no, it's just, you know, your pace gets down to, and this is what happened to a lot of folks. If you look at that race, the winning times, or the top times, I think it was about a 33% finish rate.
Whoa.
And I could have finished, but I was running out of time. You know, I think they gave you, I want to say like 34 hours to finish. And, you know, coming down that hill and knowing the pace that I was going, I mean, I'm just doing the math in my head. I'm like, I'm not going to make it. So, you know, like I said maybe earlier was, you know, if I start putting myself at risk, you know, time to stop.
Yeah.
You know, and knowing Moab was going to come up, why, you know, maybe time to bow out at that point. So did that. What I learned from that was I got too cocky with heat sometimes, because coming from Florida, you know, heat and humidity isn't an issue, but I wasn't going 100 miles either. So, you know, you still got to respect it.
But you'd run Cocodona. So what was and you ran in Cocodona in the heat.
Yeah, Cocodona last year was not hot. In fact,
right.
We had rain, snow, sleet, hail. We had everything. So it was temperature wise not an issue. So that was the hottest race I'd ever run in.
Okay.
I mean, it was hotter than 24 Cocodona, which was more of a typical year. And
it was hotter than that.
You know,
wow.
It was just a matter of you running out of time. So it's a tough course.
By the time you do Black Hills, is the back still a concern? Like, is the back always a concern, or no? That was gone. Okay.
No.
Okay. You set up a big, impressive 2025 calendar. You kill Cocodona. You're signed up for Moab, and that's just a couple months later. Are there any changes in your strength protocols? What changed after Black Hills? Did you do anything different to dial in a couple months to get to Moab?
Nope. No, I'm pretty comfortable with, you know, I guess the process that I follow with doing 3 or 4 week blocks and then take a week down and then repeat. So yeah, Moab was another, I would say, weather condition problem. Do we want to go through that gory detail?
Yeah, because each one of these, you solved the problems. You now have all the arrows in your quiver. They're designed to solve the problem that you solved that hit you previously, but you still just got those arrows. So every time you go to a new race, you're either going to use the arrows or going to build a new one, right? That seems like what happened. Yeah. So talk about that. Yeah, talk about the Moab experience.
So Moab was another, I guess, abnormal year as far as weather was concerned, because it rained the whole time. What was impacting a lot of folks was their feet. Blisters, you know,
maceration and just wetness,
just awful. And I would stop, you know, I don't know, every other aid station or something like that, check my feet. I had medics check my feet, and they're like, these are the best feet I've seen since the race started. So my feet were in great shape.
That's the coolest thing. I've heard a lot of things about a lot of things, but I never heard someone say, those are the best feet we've seen in the race. Like, wow.
It was so funny. You know, I'd be leaving the aid station with some folks, and I'm like, hey, you know what the medic said? I got the best feet here.
Yeah, flex whenever we can, Kevin. Good job. Man, you're like looking down at those Solomons and saying, oh yeah. Do you wear toe socks? Just tangent. Do you wear toe socks or no?
Yeah, toe socks. Yeah. And regarding shoes, one of the reasons I stay with Solomon's, they have different lug profiles.
Yep.
And, you know, I'll use certain lug for hills, muddy, that I, you know, I'll use different lug depth for normal conditions. And then even when you get to semi kind of road gravel, I've got another, variation that I use for those. So they treated me well, but it was another situation, so dealing with rain, doing the last climb of the race. So I'm hit Pole Canyon, and you go from Pole Canyon to Geyser, and then maybe you have one other aid station, and then you're home free. So I'm close to mile 200 again. And I leave Pole Canyon with another fella, Gavin from Canada. We, maybe get about halfway in, and we get hit with a storm. And it was like just 3 waves of torrential rain blowing sideways. And I had some pretty good rain gear on. And we're probably at this point halfway between Pole Canyon and Geyser.
Okay.
No tree cover, no nothing. Oh. We're totally exposed. The first wave hits us, and, I'm still in pretty good shape. I'm not wet or anything. Second wave hits us, and I'm like, I'm starting to get a little wet here. And there's the third wave, and I'm like soaked to the bone. It's 30 degrees out. And it just became a matter of, I got to go 6 or 7 miles back, and I don't have dry clothes there. I have some clothes up at the next aid station, which is about another 7 or 8 miles. And we just, what? We got to get out of this situation.
Got to get safe.
So it was more
what time of day is it? I forget. What time of day is it?
Oh, it's middle of the night. It's probably like,
oh God, 2
or 3 a.m.
Oh, that's hard.
That was, what could I have done to prevent it? Well, there was one thing I could have done. I looked back at my notes. I was scheduled to take a 2-hour nap at Pole Canyon, and I didn't do it. I got greedy and left. Had I stayed there for those 2 hours, I would have probably been fine. So that was an important lesson.
Another lesson.
Sometimes you let greed, allow you to get over your ski tips, and you take a tumble. So
it's such a pleasure to speak with you and listen to you, because the stories, in a way, Kevin, the stories that I built in my head about who you are and how you operate, because I don't know. All I see is your results, and I can't connect with you. And I got to talk to Stephanie and with Paul. And so you became this, in my head, nobody else's head, just me. But I was like, imagine who this guy is. So I appreciate you're just bringing it for yourself, and you're doing it for you, and every lesson you're learning. And, it's impressive, and I'm glad to see. I love seeing the DNFs, because I do think it's. I've decided that means data, not failure, because
I like that.
Everyone you go through is more information, right? And I wanted to be able to talk about. We can certainly talk about retirement and all those things if you like, but hang on a second. I want to put this up because this is just. This is so beautiful, and I'll let you walk us through what this thing is. Now, this is a 66-year-old guy who's done a lot of crazy good things. There we go. Can we see that one? I think we can in a second. So let's just celebrate this. So talk to us first about when you planned all the long 2025 races.
Right.
They weren't excessive. You just walked us through. It was a legitimate calendar, attainable, achievable, still big, hairy, audacious goals, but doable, right?
Yeah.
And the year before, you covered all those miles. And so here we are. So now we can see the Cocodona look at the bottom of this one right there. The Cocodona 2025, right? We see that. And the next thing, then we go to long haul. So now from January of 2026, you start the process. We're 66 years old. You just ran a 100-miler, and you got a lot of races scheduled. I'll stop talking, and I'm just going to start taking notes because you're delivering some wisdom here. Talk to us about each of those. Look at that list. Every one of them you signed up because talk about the why of it all, and just talk about the calendar. And I'm going to leave this up for a minute because it's really fun to watch you walk through them, I think, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and I hate to say it. I'm glad my wife can't hear me. I'm in 2 other races too that aren't there yet. So.
Oh, thank goodness. All right. Well, yeah, I don't know what to tell you about that. First of all, what are the other 2? But then cover these. Like, what do you mean 2 others? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Well, I guess the mindset's changing a little bit.
Talk to us. Okay.
Because last year, okay, let's pack some 200s in there and see how the body accepts that. And even though 2 of the 3 were DNFs, the one that was longest I was able to get through, and I feel pretty confident I could have handled the other 2 if not for some abnormal situations. So
that you described, that's right.
Body was able to kind of absorb that punishment, and so this year it's, well, let's take it to maybe another level and see. I'm not necessarily concerned about finishing times. I'm more concerned about finishing and being able to go to the next step. Next step being there's, I think, 1 or 2 races in there that are a couple of weeks apart. And I will say this, I mentioned Martin earlier. He's half to blame for this. Hey, let's maybe go do this race. Oh, okay, it sounds good. And before you know it, now I'm signed up for 11 races. So he's partly to blame.
Martin Sheeklock?
By the way, he's got a very good YouTube channel that if anybody's researching a race, he's probably done it. And he puts out some excellent videos.
What's the channel? Do you know? Is it called just Martin Sheeklock, or is it called something?
No, it's called Ultrakraut. He's German. So Ultra, Kraut.
Oh, that's a great handle, Ultrakraut.
Yeah, so
that's great.
He's got some great videos out there. So
Did he run the Monster? Talk to us about how you signed up for the Monster?
Well, because I told the family I wouldn't do Cocodona again, but they didn't say anything about Monster.
Oh man, you're an automotive. You're not even a lawyer, and you're talking like lawyering. Okay.
After Moab, my wife grounded me from racing any 200 miler. So technically, this wasn't a 200 miler; it was 300. So I found my way around that.
The Moab, though, that's scary. Middle of the night, 30 degrees, sideways rain in the Utah where it's supposed to be hot so I can understand that. That was, were you scared? I can imagine the moment, what the hell are you supposed to do? That's scary.
Yeah, that was probably the one and only time that I was a little nervous, just because of where we were on the course. It had been somewhere else, I wouldn't have been as nervous about it. But being at that elevation, we were up over 10,000 feet, I think, at that point. It was just it was the wrong place at the wrong time. One of those deals.
Exactly.
All right. So getting back to this.
Yeah. When did you sign up for Arizona Monster? It happens in March, but I don't remember when the registration opened, but I feel like it might have been.
I think it was probably December.
Okay.
When I signed up for it, because I think like most people, you're kind of setting your calendar up for the following year, and maybe you get into some lotteries here and there, and so it was part of the process in building up the calendar, and so I put that one in, and Cowboy 200 is the other 200 to multiple day adventures.
This is so reasonable. Look at that. So you finished the race in January, long haul 100. You'd already signed up probably for Monster and the Cowboy. Look how reasonable this looks, though, right? So you do the 300-mile race, then a couple of 100-mile races that are, going to keep you going. And Kettle Moraine's a nice one. I was out there crewing somebody a couple of years ago. Then you got another one in August, and then the 200. It seems so logical. Right? This feels like, wow, must be what it looks like. when you finally know a little bit more about your body, you've run the 200s, lots of hundreds. This is what it can look like for somebody. Yeah, at 66.
Yeah. Yeah, the one that's not shown on there right now is I'm signed up for is, I think it's the end of May. It's in Pennsylvania. What's it called? Rabid Raccoon.
Okay, Rabid Raccoon. Whoa.
Yeah.
I never heard that one.
Yeah, actually, it's a Western States qualifier. It'll be the first year that it was given that designation. So it's getting to be a little bit of a bigger race.
So you've run a couple of Western States qualifiers, yes?
Yeah, done any good. I'm not in it.
Well, yet. Who knows? In December, you waited, to hear that. Stephanie Irving, the woman who finished behind you last year, didn't have a lot of tickets, but she had enough. And she got in. Yeah, she's in.
Good for her.
Yeah. She went there in person for the lottery. And so she's one of the few that was in the audience, got to stand up and run down to the stage and woohoo! Pretty cool.
Good for her.
That's pretty cool. So we look now, I took it off the screen, but now it's so March is Arizona is 300. April is the C&O Canal 100 in Maryland. May is the Rabid Raccoon, Pennsylvania. June, Kettle Moraine in Wisconsin. July, then August is a 100-miler. And then September, the 200-miler.
Yeah.
So clear. Are you concerned that if you didn't have one of these 100-mile races, that somehow your fitness would fall off, or, that cadence that we talked about? Is it as important to your body as it is in your head?
No, I don't think I'm concerned about it. It's just a little bit, for instance, that race in Pennsylvania, then go to Kettle Moraine. There's a 2-week gap there. And I've never done that, where I've had such little time. So that was, I want to do a hometown race, but I'm kind of curious to see, because you see a lot of folks that are doing high volume can turn around and do something right away. I'm going to just see what happens to me. My body going back to back like that. But that's where I am saying I'm not so much concerned, because in prior hundreds, it's like, can I still crack 24 hours? This is more of, I don't care about time. I want to be able to finish one race and be able to go directly into another one and see how I come out on the other side. Yeah,
you just don't want to be pulled. You want to make it to the race. So right. This will be the first time that would interrupt that flow of you slowed down for a couple of weeks. You didn't call it taper, but when you recover for a week and a half or 2 weeks, and then you just step back into it just enough time to go into the race. This time, if it's only 3 weeks total, well, that'll be interesting, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I mean, that's the great thing about, the ultra running is just, you can test yourself as much as you want to and learn as much about yourself as you want to. It's just, go out and do it.
What does a 300-mile race mean to a 66-year-old athlete?
I don't know. I really don't look at it that way. It's just, what's a 300-mile race look like to me? I don't really put it in the age category. It's more or less just like any other race. You kind of take the course, you dissect it, in segments, and, what can you do this section, spreadsheet for everything. So, I have my spreadsheet, my chart, and, the times, not having, run that area. It's just on paper, so you don't really know how it'll progress. You plug in your sleeping time, your idle time, and those kind of things, and you just go out and you try and execute as close to the plan as you can. And you know that things are going to smack you in the mouth that you're not expecting, and what do you do to recover from them? And then make some friends along the way. So we'll see what happens.
There's a lot of miles planned this year compared to last.
Yeah.
Is it joy that's bringing you this accumulation of miles? Or are you finishing something? Or are you proving something? Or it's a lot of volume with a smile on your face. So
Yeah.
is there a story about it? Or is just time to do it? Or it just feels right? It's a lot of volume. Why? Why so much volume?
Yeah, I mean, it's time to do it. I'm blessed that way to be able to go out and do these things. I'm knock on wood, been injury free. You know, I've not had any significant injuries. When I was much younger, high school and that, I had knee issues that I dealt with. So I never thought I would be in where I'm at today. You know,
Okay.
with this is just totally out of nowhere. I think we all want to challenge ourselves in whatever way that we can, and that we're capable of doing it, not just maybe physically, but mentally too. It just seems like the right time. Let's just go see what we can do and see what we look like on the other side. So it may be that when I finish this year, I may only be signed up for one race next year. I don't know. Or it could be a repeat. It's a little bit of the unknown. And I kind of like that. So we're going to give it the best shot, see what happens.
That's a great approach. How about the family? Who's crewing and pacing for the Arizona Monster?
No one. I'm giving them a year off. So, but so they'll
wait
be.
Wait a minute. So you do have a spreadsheet, thank goodness, and it's March
Yeah, I
already.
do
So
have a
so
spreadsheet.
spreadsheets
I
is
never leave
probably
home
pretty
without the
populated.
Yeah.
What's the drop bag What's the drop bag theory or philosophy look like on your spreadsheet getting ready for the Monster?
Well, you take advantage of every location you can. So I think I have, there's 12 places for drop bags. I've got 12 drop bags. So, you know, you're stuffing them with what time of day you think you're going to come through with your nutrition for one or two segments until you get to the next one, and potential clothing changes and lights. Yeah, I mean, you got shoes and socks and first aid and whatever else that you can jam in it. It seems like half the stuff I end up using and the other half I don't use.
Right.
And that's kind of what I like about this whole deal too, is it seems like half of your work is the planning.
Yeah.
And dialing that in. And then you do the event. Believe me, I love having the crew and I love having our daughters with us. But, you know, doing it on your own is another, I guess, level of satisfaction in the whole deal too. And, you know, you've been around the sport. You go into an aid station, there's such great volunteers that are willing to help you in any way possible. And there's people from other crews that you start seeing along the way, and they're stepping in to try and help you too. So you're never alone in these things, you know?
Right. True. How big are your drop bags? Use like 10-liter bags or Ziploc bags, or a giant, like, if you're putting all your gear in 12 different bags, that's a lot of stuff.
Well, you know, I don't know what they are, 20 liter or something like that. They're not huge. They're big enough, you know, where I can fit in, you know, I have different sizes, you know, so I'll use one size for, you know, where I'm going to put shoes in. And, you know, if I'm just putting nutrition in, you know, another bag, it's going to be smaller.
I think you're right that it's the preparation. I hope people enjoy it. I love it, but maybe I love it because I haven't done as many races as you have. But every time I prepare for one, I get better, right? I get better, no matter the result of the race at all. I was like, oh, I know what I need and how I need it, where I need it. You know, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
I laminate, so I kind of script out everything that I'm doing. So I've got a laminated spreadsheet in my pocket at all times, and I whip that thing out, and I kind of know, okay, well, I'm coming into this aid station. I know what's a priority and what I need to get, and you just go do it.
Oh my goodness. That was my dirty little secret. I laminated all my stuff, but I never said it out loud. Wow. Oh, Kevin, man. Brother from another mother. I love to hear that. Yeah, I did that. I feel like once I laminated stuff, I'm like, well, that told me in my head, I guess, it told me like, okay, you're ready. Like, come on, you're ready. And, well, That's impressive. That's exciting. All right. I used to ask people for the longest time, has your why evolved as you get older? And that's good. So that's a good one. But I have a couple of rapid fire questions too, just for your quick opinion. But first thing is, has your why evolved as you got older? Why do you run?
I don't think so. I mean, I started running to stay in shape. It's a stress reliever. You know, I think, you can solve a lot of problems and create maybe some new problems for yourself out running when you have all that time by yourself, especially in some of these. I mean, you get to see some places that a lot of people don't get to see, and that alone is a gift in this whole thing. I've seen wildlife that normally wouldn't see. I had never seen the Milky Way until I did Cocodona the first time. Lifetime memories that you kind of create. And at the root of it, to stay in shape and to keep mentally alert and to do all those things. That's still there. That's enough to keep me going.
That's a good answer. I mean, it's personal. It's always personal. It's always the right answer. It's always a good one. Yeah. Okay. These are quick shots. Let's hear the wisdom. This is the wisdom of Kevin Fleeger. Here we go. Number one, one thing runners over 60 get wrong.
Maybe they're a little afraid to take the first step. And maybe, again, it comes back to age is only a matter if you make it a matter, I think. And so I wouldn't get too hung up on that. It's experience comes into play for a lot of these things. And what's the saying about, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? And I think that can overcome a lot of things. It's just a matter of putting yourself out there, not being, afraid because, I'm 65. I should be sitting on, the couch doing this, that, or the other thing.
Okay. Shifted away from the age. Then let's talk about experience for newer runners, no matter how old they are. What's one thing that they really underestimate?
Strength training. I think that there's a lot of folks that maybe, and you don't, like I maybe mentioned earlier, you don't know until you get into it. And again, if you pay attention to your body's going to tell you what you need to do. And it's up to you then to start addressing the situation. If you don't, guess what? Next time it's going to be just as miserable the last time and so on. And you can overcome a lot of things just by, taking the time to do that. And I just hear a lot of people get so hung up on miles. And, the other thing is you don't have to, especially, if you're retired, you can structure your day. Maybe you can't. That, you don't have to do all these long runs and beat yourself up. So I might, like I said, I go out and run 7 miles in the morning. And I don't beat myself up. I don't go full tilt. I'll walk a little bit, I'll run, and then I'll come home and I'll have lunch and do whatever I need to around the house. And then I'll go back out in the afternoon. And so when it comes to weekend, when everybody's doing a 30-mile run, I don't really do that. So there's ways that you can preserve yourself too.
That's a really personal approach, and it's brilliant. It's self-awareness, really, to give yourself the freedom to do that and not be influenced, especially people just starting out, like they think they're supposed to do whatever, one thing or another, and they really don't have to do that. Two more things. Oh, go ahead.
Let me just say something about that, and I have all the respect for younger folks that are getting into this and, maybe starting a family, have young kids, work and doing all that. I couldn't have done this when I was younger. I just wouldn't have had the time to do it. And my hat's off to those folks. I mean, to be able to, get up. So a lot of them I talk to out on the trails, they're getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning to go out and, put 10, 12 miles in. That's not fun.
The follow-up question really has to do with retirement. And maybe it translates into pure gratitude. I'm not sure. The more and more people that I speak with who are literally over 60, doing hard things, whatever that looks like, many people are still working in one way or the other. They still have, business type responsibilities. They're not often tied to a calendar like they used to be. And so there's an awful lot of gratitude, and you just touched on it, right? So we're out there running, and people that just aren't retired yet, they're younger. And so the responsibilities that they might have in their day-to-day work life, busy, personal life, whatever, it's just different. And so tying that together, think about you at 45 or 50. Could you have done what we're doing now at that time? Or kind of just said it like it seems hard to imagine. For me, it seems hard to imagine. If I'm 15 years ago, there's no way I could even do what I'm trying to do now.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't have done it. I just wouldn't have had time in the day to do it.
Right. Kevin Fleeger, you're pretty amazing. At 66, what is still possible?
I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see.
We're just going to have to wait and find out.
Yeah.
Kevin, what a pleasure. Thank you for joining on the podcast today. I'm so glad that I saw you and saw that data of you and Stephanie and Paul James Johnson in May of 2025. And great to speak with you. Thank you for joining. And I really do look forward to one of these days seeing you out there on the trails.
Yeah, same here, Mark. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.